Let me tell you about the worst birthday of my life. And the rain just made everything sting a little more, because on my 32nd, I sat alone in a little yurt cafe, watching the wax pool around a single candle, with a cake I didn't even want to eat, just sitting there like a prop in some sad play. It was supposed to be a celebration, but if you walked in, you'd probably think someone had died. You know what I mean? And in a way, something had. 3 years earlier, I'd had that accident, the one that put me in this chair, and since then, every year felt less like a party and more like a reminder that my dad was the one who pushed for these birthdays, always saying we had to make the best of things, but he never actually showed up. Always urgent calls or the deal can't wait. So I just sat there, looking at the empty chair across from me, listening to rain beat on the window. Sometimes I wondered if he saw me as a person or just one more thing to manage in his busy schedule. Yeah, that happened, but that's not the part that sticks with me, not really. See, at the next table, there was this architect, Daniel Torres, new face in town, clearly a little out of place, not that I knew his story then. He was trying to distract his daughter, Sophie, who looked about 7, coloring furiously with those stubby crayons you only get at cafes. I'd have paid no mind, except out of nowhere, Sophie gets up, walks over, and just plops herself in the chair across from me, eyes wide, like she knew I needed company more than anyone in that room. Let me back up a sec. After my accident, people mostly didn't know how to act around me, so they just didn't. But Sophie, with her chipped nail polish and complete lack of filter, asks if I'm sad because it's my birthday and I don't like the cake. I laughed, real, from the gut kind of laugh, the first one in a long time. Daniel apologized, started to hurt her back, but I waved him off, and that's how it started. We just talked, first awkward, then easy, and pretty soon Daniel and I were swapping stories about moving, losing people, trying to make it through. Turned out they'd just landed in England, trying to restart their life after losing Sophie's mom. Talk about timing. Sundays sort of became our ritual, almost by accident. It'd start with coffee and end up as hours of wandering. Daniel pushing my chair over the cobblestones, Sophie chattering about dragons and rain puddles, me forgetting, at least for a while, how heavy my world had felt. Funny how fast you start leaning on people who come out of nowhere. Daniel didn't treat me like glass, didn't pity me, just talked to me. And over time, he started to see past the chair, past the obvious, to the fight I'd been carrying inside, day after day. But nothing good lasts without a fight, right? My dad, Richard Rain, king of suspicion, never trusted Daniel, saw him as some immigrant chasing an easy life through his poor, broken daughter. I'm not exaggerating. That's the way he looked at it. He dug into Daniel's background, cornered him at the house one night, said things I still wish I could unhear, accused him of playing me, using Sophie as a shield. It got ugly fast. Daniel, proud and stubborn, wouldn't take it, and neither would I, honestly, but in the end, it all blew up. Daniel and Sophie packed up, left York, and I was stuck. My dad thought he'd protected me, but all he did was build a prison I couldn't get out of. I had a choice. Spend my life letting my father's shadow decide who I was, or finally step out, no matter how messy it got. That's when I remembered my mother, her quiet strength, the way she'd leave me notes in the margins of books, always telling me I was more than anybody's idea of damaged. She'd left me a small inheritance, just enough to build something real. So I did. I opened a small creative agency, hired people who never got a second chance elsewhere, and slowly started to feel like I was building a life that was actually mine. Time rolled on, months, then years, with no word from Daniel. Sometimes I'd catch myself in a shop window, wondering if I'd even recognize him if he walked by, or if Sophie would still have those wild curls and impossible questions. Europe changed, and so did I. The business grew. I got better at being alone, but never quite got used to missing them. Until one rainy fall afternoon. Same cafe, same old cake. I heard a familiar laugh behind me. It was Daniel, a little grayer around the eyes, and Sophie, taller, but still carrying that spark. We just looked at each other for a moment, and it was like time folded in on itself, all those years shrinking down to nothing. No big speeches, Just a quiet kind of understanding that we'd both survived our storms, and maybe, finally, it was safe to start something new. I'm not saying we rode off into the sunset. Life's not a movie, and I still had to fight for every inch of ground. Still had to stand up to my dad, who never quite got it. But we found a way to build our own kind of family. Me, Daniel, and Sophie, one cobbled together from loss, grit, and those tiny moments of kindness that save you when you least expect it. You ever wonder if happiness sneaks up on you when you finally stop chasing after someone else's idea of it? That's what Yerk taught me. That sometimes you find love in the fallout, family where you least expect it, and the real trick is having the guts to claim it. Even if no one else thinks you should. So here's my question. Do you think people can ever really break free from the people who try to control them? Or are we all just spinning in their orbit, waiting for permission to live? Let me know what you think. Drop your story below, or just tell me which part made you want to throw something at the screen. Justice, forgiveness, stubborn hope. Where do you land? I'll be here, listening, because these days, I know what it means to have someone finally listen back. Looking back, it's kind of wild how fast life settles into a new normal, even after everything blows up in your face. You get used to the empty spots at the table, the routines you build to fill the silences, and every once in a while, you almost convince yourself you're perfectly fine on your own. That's what I tried to do, anyway. Throw myself into the agency, push through every day, get louder, tougher, just to prove I wasn't broken. But if I'm honest, there were nights I'd sit awake, wondering if I'd traded one kind of loneliness for another. You know what I mean? Sometimes the walls you build for protection turn into the very thing that traps you. Running the agency wasn't easy. I made mistakes, a lot actually. I hired people who needed second chances, the kind nobody else would look twice at, and that meant some folks let me down. There were weeks when the bank account hovered close to zero, when I had to choose between paying rent and paying staff, and I could almost hear my father's voice in my head, telling me I was just chasing a fantasy. But then we'd land a project, usually small, sometimes weird, but every time it felt like we were carving out our own little corner of the world. There was this janitor named Ray, older guy, rough around the edges, who'd sometimes stay late just to fix things nobody noticed. One night, I caught him in my office, quietly straightening picture frames. "You can always tell how much someone cares by the way they fix what's crooked," he said, not even looking up. I didn't answer, but that line stuck with me. Somewhere in all that noise and hustle, I learned what it meant to show up for myself, not just for other people's expectations. The real twist? The agency started to matter, not just to me, but to the people around me. Clients kept coming back, not because we were the flashiest, but because we listened, really listened. It's strange, isn't it? How much people just want to be seen. Even the toughest ones, like Mrs. Callahan. She came in one day, all pearls and icy stares, demanding a website for her antique shop. Turned out, she just wanted someone to ask about her late husband's stamp collection, to remember that she was more than her business. Sometimes I wonder if that's what we're all chasing underneath the noise, just to be noticed, just to matter. And, yeah, in the back of my mind, Daniel and Sophie were never far away. I kept expecting the ache to fade, but it never really did. Sometimes I'd see a kid with wild curls on the street, or hear a snatch of Spanish in the market, and my heart would trip over itself. I tried dating. A couple times, nothing serious, mostly just attempts to fill the space. But nobody else made me feel like the walls could drop for even a second. So when Daniel showed up again, out of nowhere, it almost didn't feel real. He looked different, older, a little more worn, but his eyes still had that steady warmth, the kind you only find in someone who's lost something big and decided to keep loving the world anyway. Sophie was a teenager now, taller, braver, with that same wild streak. At first, I kept my distance, didn't want to hope, didn't want to get dragged under again if things went sideways. But, little by little, old habits slipped back in. Coffee on Sundays. Long talks that bled into dusk. Sophie teasing me about my hopeless cooking. Daniel helping patch the leaky office ceiling. And I realized, slowly, that what we had wasn't just a spark. It was something built to last, if we were willing to fight for it. My father, of course, didn't make things easy. He tried every trick, guilt, money, even threatening to cut me off. I almost laughed. By then, I didn't need his approval, or his cash, or the power he thought he held over me. I'd built something real, maybe messy, definitely imperfect, but real, and for the first time, I felt steady. When he finally realized he couldn't scare me anymore, he got quiet. We haven't spoken much since. Maybe we never will. But I stopped waiting for him to apologize or understand. Instead, I focused on the people who showed up. Daniel, never flashy, never demanding, just there every single day, doing the hard, boring work of building a life together. Sophie, who made me laugh at myself, who called me out when I got too stuck in my head. The agency family, Ray, Mrs. Callahan, all the oddballs and dreamers we collected along the way. Even on the tough days, I never felt alone again. I don't want to pretend it was all perfect. We had fights, over money, over past hurts, over where to spend the holidays. Sometimes I'd get scared I was too broken to let myself be loved, or that Daniel would get tired of picking up the pieces. But we stuck with it. You know, I think that's what real family is, choosing each other day after day, even when it's easier to walk away. Last month, on my birthday, I found myself back at that old cafe. Same rain, same battered table. But this time, the room was packed. Daniel had planned a surprise, Sophie, my staff, even Mrs. Callahan with her dog-eared stamp album. Someone put a candle in the cake, and when I blew it out, I didn't wish for a different life. I just looked around and thought, yeah, after everything, I made it here. I'll ask you again, in case you're still listening. What would you do if you stopped waiting for permission and just took your shot at happiness? Do you think forgiveness matters more than being right? Can broken things really be mended? Or do we just build new stories around the cracks? Tell me your thoughts, your stories, your best or worst birthday. Drop it all below. I promise, someone out there needs to hear it. Maybe even me.